Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam.
All That Jam, Quick Hit. Jono Manson on Kitchen Sink Studio.
That's fantastic. You've mentioned Kitchen Sink a few times. Why don't we
Yes.
jump into a little bit about that? Last year, you had a huge year with that. You have many plates in the air. You want to talk about anything that you want to throw out that you're really up on? I know I saw toward the end of the year on Facebook you were posting a bunch of different moments from the year.
Yeah, highlights of my musical highlights from my studio life here. Yeah, I mean, last year was a really busy year and thankfully very productive with cool stuff. Things that are coming up. Well, let's see. What have I been working on since I got back? I got back off the road just before Thanksgiving, and since then, I tend to stay busy with quite a number of sort of local and regional artists from around here in Santa Fe, in and around New Mexico and Colorado and neighboring areas that come here to work with me. I've been doing what other cool stuff? I've been working lately with KT Tunstall, who is
Oh,
a
nice.
great artist. I mean,
Black
she's
Horse and the Cherry Tree.
that's her. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's done, that was her big record, which is like almost 20 years ago. But
That was
she's
her debut, right? I think that
yeah,
was
it
her
was.
debut
Yeah. I mean,
single, yeah.
she came out big.
Swinging.
And I've been working with her. She on a couple of projects. But the one that's I think the coolest and most interesting is that she wrote the music for the Broadway musical adaptation of the film Clueless, and which is opening in London next month, and then I guess if it goes well, we'll move over to Broadway. And the producers of the show asked her to record her own versions of these songs, so she's been in the studio working on that with me, and she's wonderful. She's really, really she really knows her shit and is super focused and super talented on so many levels. So it's been a pleasure working with her. Been working with next month the Mother Hips are coming back to the studio. I did a record with them in 2022. And for those of you out there who don't know who they are, you should look them up right away. Great historic band, been together for over 30 years, Northern California.
The last one is that the one that had Codine on it that they covered Codine?
Yeah. I recorded that here. We recorded it here, and then Tim and Greg mixed it in Tim's studio in California, because they're, those guys are multi-talented on so many levels, and Tim especially is such a great. But both of those guys, Tim and Greg, are great producers, and Tim is more of the hands-on guy because he's got the studio. But both of those guys, Tim Bloom and Greg Loacano, who are like the primary members, if you will, of the band, the primary songwriters certainly, are both such talented dudes. And I knew them back in the 90s because we were my band, and they were on the Horde tour, and we did gigs together. And then I wound up being managed by the same company that was managing them at the time, a company called Labyrinth that was based in San Francisco. So we kind of knew each other back then, but had never really like directly interacted. So when they came out here to make When We Disappear is the name of the album they recorded here, it was great to reconnect with them on a way more involved and direct level. And I just love the way those guys work. They're great. So I'm excited. They're coming back middle of next month to work on another project. And so those are some exciting things I've got going on. There's always something. Been working on a record with Terry Allen. I don't know if you know who he is, but he is sort of one of the godfathers of the whole Texas singer-songwriter alt outlaw scene. He's 80 years old now, and he among many. I mean, he was sort of one of the a little sort of a step ahead, like Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark and all those guys from the Texas scene, and was very much part of that world. He also wrote New Delhi Freight Train, which was covered by Little Feat. On Time Loves a Hero. You know, he's one of those guys who he's not a household name, but his influence is pretty. And he lives in Austin, but he has a house in Santa Fe, and so I've been working on a record with him. That's really cool. It's called it's a record with that he's doing with all his whole family. He and his wife, who is also a very talented artist, and both of his sons, his three sons, Bucka Allen in particular, who's like a much sought after session guy from Austin, and then their kids and the grandkids. It's a whole family album. Everyone's involved, and the record's is I think currently being entitled Blood Sucking Maniacs, which if you hang around their family a little bit, you'll see it's a apt title, not in any kind of maniacal way, but so that's another cool record I've been working on and trying to starting to peck away at things of my own, so that's the thing about having the studio. You got to carve out some me time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Do most of the artists you work with distribute the albums themselves, the music themselves, or are they with labels?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, obviously, I'd say generally speaking, the vast majority of artists these days are independent, are self-propelled to a large extent. But like, for example, Mother Hips are on Blue Rose, which is a good little label, and and to Terry Allen. I mean, KT Tunstall's on Blue Elon is the label she's on. So it's like most of the local artists that I work with are completely independent, and that can mean a lot of things. So a lot of time, an independent artist will self-release the album, but then hire publicists and other people to help them, do the important after stuff that makes the album. It gets the album noticed, so there's different levels and layers. It really depends, everybody's goals are different. I have there's one local composer musician who I work with who does these amazing sonic landscapes with music, using musicians here, and then he goes over to Uzbekistan and works with these musicians there, and then he goes to Nashville and brings the tracks there to work with John Carter Cash in his studio, and Sam Bush and Jerry Douglas and all these people playing his records, and then he brings them back here and we mix them, and he doesn't even release them. There's so many different layers and levels to like what motivates people to make art, right? And it's not always to like get it out there and heard by as many people as possible, or seen by, depending on what the medium. There are still people, obviously, in order to be able to do what I just described, you have to have a certain level of financial wherewithal, and this particular guy has another gig that helps subsidize his music thing, because he doesn't even seem, and we've worked on and off for 6 or 7 years on some of these, on numerous pieces of music that are just gorgeous and very deep and very extensive in terms of who's involved and what it took to pull it all together, that he just wants to see them get done. And then he goes at home and, burns one and listens to them, and that's his end game, so it really, when you work with people the way I do, you have to, bear in mind that there are, of course, then you got the young bands, the kid bands that are like, we're going to make it, and they're motivated by a whole nother set of criterion.
It's funny. The younger bands, I had the band Sponge on, and when they came on,
sure,
everybody, I had all 5 of them on the couch, plus the sound guy. So there were 6 of them all at once. I was trying to interview them on camera. It was fun. So what about, you do live shows too, right?
Yeah.
Out of the kitchen sink?
Oh yeah, we do. We stopped obviously during the pandemic for obvious reasons, but we do periodic live. If you can see behind me, you can sort of see in the big window back there. We have a large live room that's big enough to seat, like, we could probably fit 60 people in the audience. We kind of keep it to around 50 because our legal capacity is 49.
Mhm.
And we found out because we had a visit from the fire marshal. And
Oh.
but we do these sort of house concert style shows. And obviously our primary focus here is making is recording, but the space is beautiful and it sounds great in there. And we have a PA set up with speakers mounted on the walls and stuff. And we do these shows more often than not. It's singer songwriters, sort of more broken down, but we do also shows with full bands. And when we do the shows, 100% of the proceeds go to the artists. We don't we're not a venue, we do it and we record the shows. And then give, like, last month we had Eric McFadden and Kate Vargas in here. And they did a beautiful show. As a matter of fact, KT Tunstall did a show last month as a benefit for a local school. In here, and that was we did because a chance to see her perform in a room with only 50 people. It was a high dollar ticket, and the money went to this benefit. And and then because we started doing this and word got out about the fact that we do these shows, and then because it's a recording studio, I record the shows, and then once they're recorded, I let the artists have them then we started having people coming for the purpose of making live albums, which is a little bit of a different setup. Sometimes we'll do more than one show so that we can have multiple takes of whatever material. Like Crystal Bowersox came here a few years ago. She's I've worked with her on a bunch of different projects, but she got famous from American Idol. And she came, and her second most recent album is called Alive, and it was recorded here in front of a live audience. And it's a kind of a cool vibe, for an artist to come and work. It sort of splits the difference between being able to do a thing where you're getting feedback from a live audience, and that sort of adds energy to what you're doing as a performer, but it's also in a studio, so it's still super controlled on the technical level. And so now there's been, I don't know, probably half a dozen live albums released that were recorded here. So it's cool. It's also a fun, very immediate way to make a record. The band sets up, you do an extensive sound check, you get everything dialed in for the live sound in the studio, you get the people in here, they play a show or two, and the record is done. You might do a little teeny edit here or there or something, but essentially it's done. And that's it's one of my favorite ways to make a record, audience
You
or not.
have something, like 3 hours later, you have something you didn't have before.
That's right. And also, what the bands do, because of the fact that we give the proceeds from the concert to the artist, it's like instant crowdfunding. In other words, the bands can say, "Hey, we want to do this live thing, and then the money that they get from the ticket sales can help to pay the studio to do post-production on the record." So it's like a self-propelling paradigm. Yeah.
Now, is it separate mixes when you do this for the room and for what you're recording, or is it the same mix?
Yeah, no, there are separate mixes. There's a live mix for the room because not everything, it's a fairly small room, so not everything needs to be in the PA. Like not the drum kit doesn't need to be, the mics on the drum kit don't necessarily need to be in the PA system, but they do need to be coming in here. So it is a separate mix, and there's tie lines between the live room and the control room so that we can pick and choose. My business partner in the studio, Tim Schmoyer, typically runs the live sound and I do the recording. And so that we can pick and choose what needs to be in the room and what needs to be, and then everything needs to be in here. so that we can record everything. And we do have, everything is mic'd, and then we have ambient mics mounted at different places in the room that we also use when we're making regular records, but those are also that way you pick up the audience response and all those things, because sometimes you get a great live recording and people are like, oops, we forgot to put a mic in the audience, and you can't hear the people clapping, so we make sure all that stuff is covered.
Yeah, I'm very pro matrix mix. About 30% audience, 70% soundboard is usually right.
Yeah, I mean, and the same thing goes for mixing a live recording that you, even when you're doing it in this controlled setting, is that the part of the beauty of it is making sure you're capturing not just like the individual instruments from the close mics, but the cloud of sound that's being created. It's part of the vibe.
If you are enjoying All That Jam, please like and subscribe to our social media channels at All That Jam Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or visit our website, allthatjampod.com. Make sure to sign up for our email list and tune in every week for new episodes.
Also, look for full interviews on our YouTube channel. And remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long.